Hello friends, welcome to JavaEE JPA tutorial. In this sub-series 6, we are watching how to use JPAQL. Now you are watching part 4 of the video, and in this video we are going to query the saving account by person name. Here we will assume that person name will be unique. It won't return more than one record, and with that we will proceed. Here, since a person name is not a key field, we will use a JPAQL and we will perform the query. After that we will return the entity. Once entity is returned, we can reuse the code which we wrote as part of the previous video. Reuse the code in the sense the JSP file which already knows how to render a single entity. Here in this example also we are going to retrieve single entity, but instead of using the entity manager.find, we will go with the JPA query language. So as part of the previous videos, we learned about the JPAQL. Then we created a HTML form to perform a various query operation. Here in the previous video we completed this part, that means querying the account by its account ID, and we used the entity manager.find. We doesn't use any query language. Now here in this video we will implement the search by making use of the person name. So we created the servlet as part of the previous video. We will use the same servlet, and if you see here, form processing also done as part of our previous video. So here we will be getting submit 1 as null because user will be clicking here. So submit 2 will have a value search, and submit 1 will not have any value. It will have null. Why? Because user is not clicking this specific search. User is clicking the search 2. So search 2, when we make a call to request.get parameter for this submit 2, the associated value is a search, and that will get returned. So based on that we know that user is performing the search based on the person name. So in the last video we introduced a bean method, query by ID, and if you recap, in the bean implementation we are using entity manager.find. Then in the servlet we make use of our EJB bean. EJB bean is tied to entity manager, and the EJB bean made use of em.find. So that was in the previous slide, and the query by ID returns a single account, and then once the account savings account is returned, that means once the entity is returned, we gave it to the JSP to perform the rendering. So this is the piece of information we are going to reuse here in this video as well. So we will reuse this same JSP presentation layer. Now the code change goes on bean layer and then servlet processing. If you see here, we are introducing a new function in our remote interface. The method is query by name, In our previous method we passed the person ID. Here we are passing the person name, and this will also return a single entity. And if you see, the return type is savings account. So this is the interface, remote bin interface, and here is the implementation. So in the implementation, if you see, this is the JPAQL select. Let's skip this alias for now. Select. Usually here we will specify field names, right, in terms of native query. Select from, instead of table name, if you see, what we are specifying here is a entity type. So saving account is the entity, right? Savings account. So the savings account is what we specified. So this is the entity name, and entity alias is SAC, and in the select list we specify that alias name. That means we are telling that give me all the fields that is defined inside this saving account entity. Alright, plus concatenation. Here we are using the where condition, where SAC is our entity alias, right? So it contains a member. Here this is a field name of our entity. So if you expand this saving account type, we have a 3 field tied to the database, right? One is person ID, another one is person name, and the third one is the balance. So here SAC is our saving account entity dot field name tied to a database with the annotation @ column, and sac.pname equal to, this one is a parameter. So this column and the person name, that signifies that the query can be used for a different person name. That means based on whatever we receive here as a parameter, we will substitute that parameter here. So if we received ABC, the JPAQL will read as select SAC from savings account, SAC alias. You can give any alias name, and if you give alias name, for example S1, here we have to use S1, here also we have to use S1. Alright, person name we will substitute here, so it will read as where sac.pname equal to ABC once you substitute. So this is our JPA SQL, and if you see here, from our entity manager we are making call to create query method. So as part of the previous theory or concept slides, we know that the entity manager dot create query will return an query object. So here we are sending a JPA SQL, and if this does not contain a valid syntax, we will be getting an exception. So once this SQL is valid, we will be getting a query object. So the entity manager will return back as a query object. So once a query object is returned, if you see, we are setting the parameter. So this column person name, this signifies that it should be a substitutable one. So using the set parameter, we are substituting this person name. So here if you notice, we remove the column, but we specify this person name here, then we supply this A here. That means the parameter will be set here. So if ABC is passed, this column person name will get replaced by the ABC. Alright, now the query is ready with a value substituted here in the parameter. Next, we make a call to query.getSingleResult. So this will actually perform the execute on the underlying database. Not only that, it performs the translation. Translation means here it is JPAQL, right? JPAQL, and When this JPAQL is executed on the underlying database, it is MS SQL. So the conversion takes place from JPAQL to MS SQL format, and it performs the execute. So the returned value is typecasted into the entity, and we are storing that entity here, and then we are returning back the entity. So both our find by ID as well as find by name returns a single entity. So that means here we are assuming that the database will not have duplicate person name. So the bean instance. So the bean instance contains a entity manager. So this entity manager is tied to the bean instance, and in the annotation we specified what entity this entity manager manages, as well as how to connect to the database. So those information will be available in the persistent.xml. So in the persistent.xml there will be a persistent unit, and that we refer here, and we create an instance of entity manager. So to the entity manager we make a call to create query method. So the create query method takes JPAQL, then it performs the execute. Here actually it will create a query instance and it will give it to us. So the create query, this one represents the create query method. We pass JPAQL, we return query, then in the query we make a call to get single result, and this get single result will perform a scan on the database. So this is the name field, right? Based on this name field it performs a scan and picks a record. Since we assumed the name is unique, it may find one record, and that record will get retrieved by the get single result, and the record will be transformed into a saving account entity. There are three fields: person name, person ID, and balance. That's all. Once we have saving account, we will return it to the caller. So the sequence goes like this. First we form our JPAQL, then using the set parameter we will replace the dynamic fields. After that we make a call to create query. The create query call on the entity manager will return a query instance. Once query instance is in hand, we set the parameter. Then after setting the parameter we will execute the query using get single result, and this will pick a particular record in the database based on the name. So in the where condition we use p name, right? So it will pick the name and it returns an entity, and that entity we are returning it to the caller. The caller here will be the servlet. So the servlet will receive this saving account, just like how we performed the search by ID in our previous video. The same way servlet will receive a single saving account. So the servlet processing will be similar as compared to our previous video. Here instead of PID we are checking for person name. So if person name is not equal to none, then user provide ID a valid value for the person name. After that we check user actually clicked the submit to. So after giving person name and user clicked the right search button, then we enter inside the processing. And if you see, we are making call to sacbean.query by name. Here we pass person name. So this will be part of the form processing, which we did in our previous video itself. So that person name is passed to our saving account bean query by name. So this returns an account. So the type is a savings account, and using the request.set attributes, so the same piece of code what we did in our previous video. So we are setting this account under the request context. Then we make use of our previously created JSP file, and we create a request dispatcher and delegate the request and response object to this JSP file. So we know that this JSP file, once it has a valid savings account under this attribute, it takes care of rendering the output. So that's all the code change required. Now it's demo time. We will start implementing the searching the savings account by person name or account holder's name. So here I opened Eclipse. Now we will continue from our previous implementation. So in the EJB Bean client, we have a remote interface, saving account bean remote. So this is the function we wrote as part of our previous video. Now we will declare one more function. Control-Shift-F, so just formatted it. Now we will trace this red mark and locate our implementing bean. So this is the query by name implementation. This is our JPAQL. You can see how we are forming it. Since we pressed the Control-Shift-O, both will presented in a single line. Query, we are importing it from management. So this one, javax.persistence.query, import it. Entity manager.create query, which returns a query instance, and then we perform the parameter person name, and the person name is here. This person name, here we specified set parameter, and we are substituting whatever is the incoming parameter and replacing it here. Then we make a call to get single result, and the return result we are typecasting it to savings account, and we are returning that savings account to the caller. Now we will go back to the servlet. Now we will go back to the servlet. So as part of previous video, we did all the from processing here, and here we implemented search by customer ID. So this is the controller layer, the servlet, which takes input from the form, which makes a call to the bean, then it delegates the return value to the presentation layer, that means the JSP. The same way, now we will implement search by owner name. So if you see, we are just making call to our new function. That's all we are doing. And these are all simple the form field data validation to check the query is for person name, and the user also clicked the submit to button. Alright, now we will go ahead and check this. First we will start the server. So the Wildfly server is started. Now we will publish our EJB EAR, which contains the modified servlet. Here we are seeing the message deployed EJB EAR. Now we will go to our HTML file, saving account search form. So this time we will take a person. So person name, I'm pasting it here. Then I'm clicking search. And you can see the account ID 5 is owned by Elvin Jones. Balance is 2100. James Anderson. $1,500 is the balance. So we haven't validated null entry. So this will throw an error because the name is not found. So if you need, you can handle those validation stuff and return back the error message stating the person not found. Those stuff you can reply back to the servlet. Alright, so far we implemented searching the account by ID. So it's owned by Raman Lamba. So both are working. Then in the next video we will implement the search based on the balance, and we will also implement to retrieve all the accounts. So we will close our form. We will undeploy this by clicking the stop. And then we will remove this component. Then we will stop our server. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.